What is good, everybody? AHS Rules back again with another video as we're here for another Ring of Honor TV review, episode number 99 to be exact, and that means that next week's episode will be episode number 100. I have covered the previous 98 episodes on the channel. I'm currently covering episode number 99. And if anything doesn't happen, I should be covering episode 100 next week. So I'm not trying to prematurely celebrate, but I will be spending some time talking about that 100th episode towards the latter end. But it's a big deal to me, mainly because for 99 freaking weeks, I've talked about Ring of Honor television and tried to inform all of y'all what the hell is happening on these episodes of ROH. And so it is a big deal to me to get into the 3 digits, but we got some time before that. Now, that being said, this episode, not a good precursor for a monumental episode next week, but we got some time to dwell into that. So we have an 8-man tag to kick off the show. We got an 8-man tag to end the show. It is very weird because normally ROH announces in advance on their Instagram and other social medias, but I mainly see it there, the matches and what's going to happen on the episode. And sometimes they add stuff later on, but this time around they had 7 slots, which one of them was a Athena World Tour update, which is in the thumbnail because I thought that was the most interesting thing that happened on this episode. Granted, it lasted like a minute, and they had 7 slots, which 2 of them included Katsuyori Shibata in action and the Outrunners in action, and it didn't list their opponents. So most of the time when they have like Katsuyori Shibata in action, it's a squash match. So it's very weird that the opening match involved Shibata, the Outrunners, and Commander being a team. But before we get into that, and speaking of Commander, the thing that kicked off this episode of Ring of Honor Wrestling was QT Marshall, and talked about not being appreciated by Paul White. But Paul White did grant him a TV title match for next week's episode against Commander. And maybe if he becomes TV champion, that Paul White will start to appreciate him and give him a little bit of respect. Now, the weird thing about this is that last week they set up this match to happen on this week's episode. So I guess they were just waiting to have it on a bigger episode. Granted, probably could have picked a better opponent for Commander, but that's another issue. So, our opening contest this week, a random team, but it is what it is. Katsuyori Shibata, Commander, and the Outrunners facing Dylan and Zach Stewart, Rosario Grillo, which is difficult to say fast, and Colby Carter. Grillo and Shibata start the match off where Grillo is chopped several times. The Outrunners end up into the ring and hit the double 10-count punches in the corner. Madam gets stuck in his opponent's corner until Floyd is able to tag in. Shibata hits his corner dropkick on Grillo for a 2-count. This sets up Commander to hit his rope walk shooting star press, and Shibata to finish the match off with the penalty kick. Next matchup, Tony Nese versus the Beast Mortos. The premier athletes promote their shirt, which each week the audience never correctly reads the shirt and they say athletes suck, which most weeks I just ignore it. This week I wanted to mention it to you. This has happened on several occasions and probably will not stop. And they do sell a shirt on Shop AEW. I know it's called Shop AEW. I don't know what the ROH section is called, but they sell a shirt on there that says athletes suck, and at one point it was a top seller. But it's Tony Nese versus the Beast Mortos. I don't know what is up with LFI because ROH and Drilistico has not been seen in a minute. I know there's some rumors out there about what is happening and whatnot, but I've suggested this several times, but I don't think I've said it on a ROH TV review. I've said it in other videos. I wouldn't mind LFI, Drilistico, ROH, and the Beast Mortos as the ROH 6-man tag team titles because Dustin Rhodes and the Von Erichs have not defended them in a hot minute, and if you're going to have the titles around and have these like multi-men and trios matches, you might as well have them fight to earn something. And I would say a top pick for the next ROH 6-man tag titles are LFI. And I just want to see them kind of dominate ROH, but wild suggestion. The match, though, this time around is Tony Nese versus the Beast Mortos, who was outnumbered 4-1 because he was not accompanied by his group members. But Nice lands an eye poke early, which is not enough to keep the Beast down as he lands a dive onto the athlete on the outside. This does not stop them from interfering a little bit later on. Mortos' backbreaker gets a 2 count. He tries to finish the match off with a headbutt, but the athletes interfere once again. But it is the last time that they can because they are ejected afterwards, and the Mortos wins the match off with a pile driver. So it's always enjoyable to see the Beast Mortos. As now, we go backstage with the MXM collection, and they're talking about how they've ran through everyone in ROH and are ready for the sun to set on the Sons of Texas and challenge Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes for a future title match for the Tag Team Championships. We got a series of squash matches next. The first one being Blake Christian versus Parker Lee. Christian delivers a smack after the Code of Honor and spends a lot of time during this match taunting and wins off of a double knees. And the one thing that bothers me about this is I started a whole new page in my notebook where I could have wrote this entire match on the last page, but that's just a me issue. Also, another thing that's a me issue. I'm starting to run out of the good pins that I have. This is my last good one, along with the red one that I use strictly for Retro Match of the Week. Good news is my new pack of pen comes in the mail tomorrow. But the next thing that we need to discuss is something that is a big deal. Like I said, it's in the thumbnail of the video. But the Athena World Tour continued this last week as she defeated Tekla to retain her Ring of Honor Women's Championship at Stardom. And a very emotional Athena after the match showed her appreciation for competing for the first time in Japan and in Stardom. So that was cool to see. Athena, we do need you back here on ROH TV because, you know, your segments over in Japan aren't as long. Granted, I did say I should probably, watch the matches and cover them, but at least if ROH didn't, acknowledge it at all, I would, but at least they acknowledged it this week. So, and I made a big deal about it by putting it in the thumbnail. Next matchup is a proving ground bout, that being Red Velvet versus Angela Risk, which the two have history, and a lot of this match was just them arguing with each other, talking about how one's beat one in the past, one hasn't, etc. We get a feisty Code of Honor due to this. Velvet at one point throws her opponent under the ring, and I thought she was going to get a count out, but the referee never really counted at that point, which would have been a smart strategy, but the referee wasn't dealing with it. Risk hits a tornado DDT, but other than that, this is a mainly Red Velvet match with her winning after a vicious right hand. So we do have a retro match of the week. I just swapped the words. Retro match of the week, throwback match of the week. And it is the first match that happened on ROH TV on Honor Club, that being Mark Briscoe versus Slim J. Episode number 1. March 1st, 2023, I think is the exact date. Now, my rule, if it's a match that I've covered before, I'm not going to re-review it. What instead I'm going to do, and it's something that I might regret, I reviewed this match. It's the very first match that has ever been reviewed in this ROH on Honor Club series. The exact episode is AR Fox versus Claudio Castagnoli, episode 1. That is not that review. Like I said, it was the first review I had did in years and years. I stutter and mumble and jumble through that. It's not my best review, but 99 episodes later, I like to think that I'm a better reviewer now. So if you want to see me stumble my way and talking about what happened in that match, go for it. This is also the week that I know, because like I said, I don't like watching these episodes live, because if I pause and then I unpause, it goes back to what's happening live. I watched that episode live. It was 2 hours. I sat for 2 hours straight covering this crap, and covering this crap, and it was a struggle. So I learned from there, let me watch it on video on demand, that way I can watch at my own pace and get good notes for it. So I learned from there. And I make exceptions for if I need to get the review out early, which is mainly during pay-per-view weeks. So there's that. As now, we have our last match on this episode, this being an 8-man tag with Shane Taylor, Lee Moriarty, Lee Johnson and EJ Ndoku versus Alex Reynolds, Evil Uno, Serpentico, and Boulder. Why so many factions are intermingling and changing things up, I don't really know. It might be a travel issue or something. They did at least mention that John Silver is out with a shoulder injury at the moment, so there's that. Reynolds and Moriarty start the match off with a bit of a technical approach, which they've definitely competed in other multi-man tag matches, and I think that they have the same start almost every time, so maybe it's just kind of a, are you paying attention type of thing. Ndoku dominates over Serpentico after catching him on the outside. Boulder tries to make the save for him inside of the ring and hits a double splash on both of the Lees and eventually lands a slam on them as well. Everybody gets involved at one point. We get double frog splashes by Lee Johnson and Serpentico at the same time. Moriarty, however, was the legal man and sneak attacks Serpentico from behind and then applies a Border City stretch to win the bout and wrap up this 99th episode of ROH on Honor Club. Now, I will say this. Thing one, I have in the thumbnail ROH episode 100. Shout out to who posted that on Twitter, and I'm sourcing you in the description. So they've already filmed some things to happen next week. I did have a wild suggestion, and they can save some of this for another week. They need to bring back a Gold Rush champion, all champions episode. I remember specifically in 2014 when they had a lot less, they only had the World, TV, and Tag Team Championships. Every match was a title match. Jay Briscoe versus Mike Bennett for the world title. I believe it was Jay Lethal versus Will Ferraro for the TV title. And Red Dragon, I believe, versus the Decade. They might have faced someone else. But I had a wild suggestion that they have all title matches for one episode. Especially because the women's TV title, at some point we're getting a Red Velvet Layla Hirsch rematch. They've talked about it a handful of times. MXM are ready to step up and face the Sons of Texas. I almost called them something else. Sons of Texas for the tag team titles. I've suggested several times what they should do for the ROH six-man tag titles. LFI versus the Von Erichs and Dustin Rhodes. Pure title, bring back a pure legend for Lee Moriarty to face. Or I want to see Lee Moriarty versus Kyle O'Reilly for the pure championship at some point. Because Kyle O'Reilly is a pure wrestler that never got to compete for the pure title because in his heyday in ROH, the pure title wasn't there. So, that's a wild suggestion. Try to think. Athena, you got a lot of people that she can go through and dominate over to continue her reign. When you got so many damn titles in ROH, it's kind of hard to keep up. So I said the women's TV title, the TV title, I would much rather Commander face someone else than QT Marshall, but he's the only person that has a legitimate and actual number one contender lined up. Six-man tag titles, tag team titles. Feel like, I know one title I'm forgetting, but I saved it for last. And this is the suggestion I've had for months. Chris Jericho. This is my main thing that I want. And they still got time to film this. And this is a wild theory to throw out there. But for the big episode 100, what you can end this episode off with is Chris Jericho losing that ROH World title. And here's my wild fan theory fantasy booking. Chris Jericho has an open challenge for the ROH World title. Hey, up the ante. You can only have competed on ROH on Honor Club, and you have to be a former ROH World Champion. And then on the Tron above, we see footage of Chris Jericho running a forklift with a man on it into a wall, which ended up being the last time that man appeared for the longest time. And then Chris Jericho on his face slowly but surely realizes that man is back. And that is Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe answers this open challenge, beats the shit out of Chris Jericho for 3 minutes. Big Bill and Brian Keith, I almost called him Lee Moriarty. Brian Keith get involved. Hook and Katsuyori Shibata come out to beat their ass. And we get Samoa Joe as Ring of Honor World Champion again. Because I know several people have suggested this. I upped the ante and said, let's do it next week. They still got time to film it. I want ROH to have Samoa Joe as their world champion again. Bayley just won the title off Chris Jericho, and I'm also trying to give them something massive to happen on this 100th episode. Regardless, they could do it. They could, like I said, all the other stuff that I suggested, they could save for another episode. That way, because like next week's episode, the appeal of it is it's episode 100. This thing where I suggest like an all titles episode, they could save that, and you don't have to have every single title defended, but you know, it would make it a little bit more special. But let's get this Samoa Joe back as, and it's also like it kind of ties the loose end where that's where Samoa Joe, last we've seen him. Now him and his group are moving on to Christian Cage and the Patriarchy. But it kind of ties this loose end up, and he doesn't have to go back and look at Chris Jericho. Hook is like, no, don't put me back and deal with Chris Jericho. I just one off. But, you know, whatever happens on episode 100, I should be here to cover it all. I do appreciate y'all all for watching this. Hopefully, I see you next week for this historic, it's historic to me, 100th episode of ROH on Honor Club. I'm going to end the video now. Hopefully, you all stay safe. You leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, because I'm out for now. Goodbye.